folks, welcome to another session, and we're excited for this one. I think we did with Peleg and Baruch in the past to the space. If you remember, she can be found on my channel as well. But we're excited for this one. We're going to introduce configuration as code. We're going to talk all about it and answer some of your live questions. And we'll also share how you can contribute to Configu, which is a nice open source project. Before we get started, let's do some introduction. Peleg, do you want to go first, and then Baruch?
Of course. Thank you, Kunal. Thank you for hosting me or to hosting us. I'm Peleg. I'm more than a decade. I was a software developer, mainly low-level security, and in the past few years, I'm leading Configu as the CEO and founder at Configu, along with my partner Ron Cohen. Happy to be here and talk about configuration as code in general, DevOps, and everything else.
Hi, hello everybody. Hello Kunal, hello Peleg. My name is Baruch, and I am a developer advocate with Gradle, and very honored to be a developer relations advisor for Configu as well. I'm very excited about the space of developer tools in general and configuration as code in particular. Happy to be there.
Amazing. Well, thanks for joining, everyone. Close to 100 people joined, so we'll have more people coming in, but this is being recorded as well, so you can watch it later on if the current time zone is not working for you. But let's talk a bit about configuration as code. What is it, and how does it compare with like infrastructure as code, which is a question I got in the past when I announced this stream?
I think it's a great question. If I may, I will start. I think the difference in general in software application configuration and infrastructure configuration are they both work together, but there are a bit difference between the two, as infrastructure is mainly on the infrastructure and everything that wraps software and help it, everything that basically you can configure outside of the software, CPU, load balancing, networking, everything that Kubernetes or any other orchestration that you use needs. Software application configuration is more every configuration that inside the software itself. And as same as we manage configuration in the infrastructure level as a code with solutions such as Terraform. And by the way, congrats to Hashi for the acquisition. Same like using infrastructure as code tools, we definitely as a developer need configuration as code for infrastructure, as most developers, DevOps or developers as well, like to configure everything as code. It's easier, we can automate it, we can make it safe with tests and everything. So the future, if we're looking to the future, configuration as a code is going to be more and more popular, both in infrastructure, but also in the application domain.
Thanks for sharing, Peleg. So you're saying like maybe we can term it as like both infrastructure as code and configuration code are necessary. And when we talk about the software development, like all the life cycle, and if we talk about the best practices, for example, right, and all the benefits that configuration as code offers, in which in the broader context of DevOps culture, how does configuration as code fit into it, right? And how is it going to impact? Basically, what are some of the things that you're going to measure? So when you do implement it, what are some of the key metrics that you basically aim for that makes like, okay, we adopted it and now it's working for us and this is what we wanted to track. So what is it? What is that key metric?
I think the main one, as you decide to implement configuration as code, is to prevent misconfiguration from happening. Because in average, we can look at statistic, every company, every development team experience misconfiguration from time to time. It's going to be in development and testing, but at least once a year, we're seeing more and more companies experience it in production, having outages. And by implementing configuration as a code, we can do lots of productivity things, but the main the main things that encourage me to implement and push it to my code and to my implementation is, first of all, to prevent misconfiguration from happening. Keep your source code secured as same as you're doing it for code, for infrastructure. Now it's the time to do it for application configuration. Think of all of your .env file, all of your JSON YAMLs, all of your secrets, feature flags, and etc. that's paired across so many places, and think that you have one source of truth that can manage everything as a code, being part of the code, and still in the same time you can manage and initialize value no matter which storage system you worked with. It's create a better place to collaborate, but also secure tasks and automate it.
Thanks for sharing, Peleg. Baruch, do you have anything to add on to it? And I have another quick one, which is around when you talk about infrastructure as code, you often hear about the drift, right, as one of the challenges. Is that something that you have to worry about when we talk about like configuration as code? And just like what are some of the potential things to keep in mind?
Yeah, Pele, go for it.
Yeah, I thought you mentioned Bob.
I have
No,
another
no,
interesting
go for
question,
it.
but that's later. Go for it.
Sure. So drift is always a problem, and I think that configuration as code can even help with that. So if you have changes between several software versions, and each version consume different type of configuration, different parameters, different things, working with solutions such as Configu, but it could be others. Even we can talk about Apple implementation who start and release PKL format and each other formats that exist. All of them focus and spotlight the issues of managing configurations. And by implementing it and doing it as a code, we can push it even farther and achieve more and more capabilities when we're managing configuration and help it to balance and synchronize better with our code version and with any solution that we're consuming, such as feature flags, secrets management, infrastructure as well, such as consuming Terraform dynamic variables or injecting it at the end of the lifecycle to the runtime.
Yeah, Peleg, and you mentioned feature flags, and this is interesting distinction to make. I hear a lot people saying, "Hey, we do configuration as code because we use feature flags," but it's not exactly the same, is it?
Yeah, you're definitely right. Using the SDK of any feature flag solution is not exactly implementation of configuration as code, because the structure, the building blocks of configuration as a code are mainly abstract configuration to have one source of truth on one files, not doing it scattered across too many environments. For example, if I'm using feature flag SDK, I will be binded to this feature flag solution, and then I have to manage everything by them as a text file, as strings, key value pairs, without any real restrictions on top of them. And when I need to check or change something, it's going to be on a third-party tool. When we're talking about development life cycle and implement things right inside the code, we're talking about configuration as a code as an abstract solution, which we can bind and add in our source code as a code, add some abstract restrictions and work with it on top of any existing solution, take it to the next level, not just binding us to an SDK who can change or break, or we need to change our solution. And then it's not exactly code agnostic or technology agnostic. We're binding ourselves to a specific solution. And configuration as a code is not here to replace any feature flag solution. It's going to be a management layer on top of feature flags, on top of secret managers, on top of JSON, YAML files, .env files. It's going to be an abstract layer on top of them. So it's going to replace the implementation inside the code as a code format, but going to manage the feature flags for you without binding their SDK.
So we can say, can we argue that it can be like feature flags can be part of the config as code strategy, because they are also configurations you can control and version and review like code, but the use of feature flags alone doesn't really constitute to the whole scope of configuration as code that we're talking about right now. And like you mentioned, like it covers a broader range of configuration activities. Like we can talk about other things as well, but yeah, no, thanks for sharing,
No,
Peleg.
you're exactly right. It's feature flags and any implementation of configuration is part of configuration as a code. You can think of configuration as a code or configuration management on the application side in general as the missing piece in configuration management. So it's the management in the configuration. It's not the storage system for feature flag for rotation or something. It's going to be above that as a management abstract layer. So after discussing with more than hundreds of companies, dev teams from small startups to huge corporates, I can say that most of them are looking for the missing piece of the puzzle, which is the configuration part. And then we're bringing them and take them to the next level with configuration as a code option for their dev teams, and not the next level of feature flags, because we can mention and name several great feature flag solutions. They are all great, but they are all missing the configuration management part, the binding to the code without depending on their SDK and their capabilities, which mainly lies on text files or strings.
Cool. Thanks, Shane, Peleg, and Baruch. I want to ask a question around why now? Why do you see this increased adoption right now? And what happened in the recent developments in the tech industry that make people talk about config as code? If you'd like to share, yeah. And how would people know, like, if it's a right time for their organization to adopt it?
Great. Bart, you want to start?
Yeah,
Or
I think
will...
it's just a matter of maturity, right? I mean, it took a while until people got into stuff that looks completely basic to us, like source control. Once be, uh, it wasn't something that people do, and now you cannot think about developing anything without it, or CI, the same idea, right? So I think configuration as code is I would say the next step in kind of the fundamentals of what people need to do when they get started. And to your question, what will be the right time? The right time is when you start taking your code seriously. You probably won't need it for like a script that runs on your local machine, but once you do something on any serious level, and I would say especially when you start collaborating with people and have different environments for your development and your production, this is where it becomes absolutely necessary. If we are talking about larger, like grand scheme of things, the main driver there is the difference in environments. Our systems are so complicated right now, and our data is so large right now that it's absolutely impossible to have staging environment which replicates exactly the production environment. It's just not feasible in terms of money, in terms of effort it requires. So we end up with different environments which are kind of sort of similar but not really, and managing those small but important differences is nightmare without a solution for configuration as code.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't say it better, but I will add to that, so that from our experience at Configu, compelling event that we are seeing that push companies to use solutions such as Configu or alternatives is it could be many compelling events. It could be a team that grow really fast, and now the scale is different from development and technology perspective, or even capacity of the team is now growing and growing, and they cannot handle. It could be launching a new region, changing their technology. One day they worked with managed Kubernetes inside their cloud vendor, and the next day they implement Terraform or any other infrastructure tool or mechanism or any other orchestration system. And now they need to handle the configuration better because changing technologies, extending the team, scaling the software, all of them and many others are compelling events that push and gain a better understanding in the perspective of dev team that they need a better configuration management tool as they experience many misconfiguration, as they are doing a lot of even copy paste of configurations from file to file to file to file. If their mechanism is broke, as they are depend, there is a developers who depend on the DevOps who only have the permissions, and now the team is big and there is no much capacity for the DevOps. There are many events, but the main conclusion is that most of them will experience the need. Some of them will experience from day one. We have startups, even bootstrap startups, who's using Configu from day one, and we have corporates who's using Configu with thousands of developers who collaborate better and prevent misconfiguration by the complex scenario between their teams.
Yeah, someone is saying that is it replacing infrastructure as code? I think they might be confusing in
No,
some, because like correct me if I'm wrong. I think when we talk about infrastructure as code, you're like, okay, it's setting up the where and how of your applications, like how your applications are running. Configuration code is like what and how your applications behave, right?
definitely.
Spoke about feature flags, your application settings and stuff. So it's just the layer of control is different. You know, in infrastructure code, you have the hardware and software environments and stuff, and you like, okay, spin up these many, you know, like servers or VMs or whatever. But it's not managing how the software behaves once it is deployed. And configuration as code is filling this gap. Um, but yeah, go ahead.
No, no, exactly. And our recommendation is to combine between the two. I really like infrastructure as a code. In Configu, we implement the Configu mechanism with infrastructure as a code, Terraform, and others. So our recommendation is to combine, use configure infrastructure as a code. Sorry, any infrastructure as a code that you like, use it. Combine it with configuration as a code. For example, there are companies who use infrastructure as a code to run dynamic environments. For example, for any branch that developer opened, there is an environment that generated out of infrastructure as a code. Think of the complexity of managing the configuration of each one of the branch automatically combining to the Terraform. If you combine and integrate Configu with your Terraform solution, for example, you can achieve a better management on top of it. So if Terraform will generate the environment, generate everything, it create configuration for your environment, then Configu consume all these configuration, manage them better, and even at the end, if it's not a branch, or even if it's a branch or any running environment, it can inject your configuration to your infrastructure as a code again at the end of the lifecycle.
Yeah, because you need to change sometimes maybe the behavior of the applications without changing the underlying infrastructure. And that's what we're talking about here. All right. About Configu, before we move forward with that, by the way, all the links are in the description if you're looking forward to like contributing or joining the Discord and stuff. But I want to ask about the challenges organizations face and how Configu is sort of like solving those challenges.
Mainly is, as I mentioned, we're helping them to prevent misconfiguration, but we can talk about how misconfiguration are happening. And the main reason, the top number one reason that cause misconfiguration is the messy environment of how we're managing configuration, which caused by distribution of environment files. So it starts with so many thousands or hundreds of environments files that we're holding inside our source code. And then we have secret managers for sensitive information. We have feature flags if we want to change the behavior of the runtime between different customers, for example, or different environments. We have databases who's holding our front-end configurations that change between each customers, and more tools that we're spreading and saving configuration in. And then whenever I'm, as a developer in the team, or any DevOps, or even product manager, want to add, maintain, change something in the configuration, they're not necessarily aware to what is the end result need to be. So for example, if I have a spatial pattern that I'm worked with, and this parameter need to be in this pattern, not necessarily the man who will initialize the value will be aware to that. And cross team and how we collaborate and every aspect of management is broken in most of the companies. And Configu can help you to visualize the entire configuration environment. I can see everything, and it will help me by a test mechanism to verify that no matter what value I will initialize, it will be a correct value. So we cannot know the behavior for you, but at least you're not going to break your mechanism, you break your production, and you're not going to experience outages.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Peleg. Baruch, would you like to add anything?
No, I mean, that's exactly on point, and this is something connected to what I mentioned earlier about our software being complicated, right? And the configuration part of it is particularly complicated because it's also obscure. You see the code, but you don't see the configuration, so it's very easy to mess up. To mess up.
Cool. Thanks a lot for sharing, Baruch and Peleg. And when we talk about Configu in general, or if someone wants to get started onto this journey, implementing configuration as code, what would you recommend them to, as a first step? And I'll leave that in the description as well.
So implement configuration as a code, at least with Configu's technology, is going to be super easy. As a developer ourselves, we mainly focus on doing configuration as a code, or the configuration management that we see in front of us is need to be super easy. So we implement that with few clicks. You can onboard everything, or at least any piece of software, no matter which technology you use, no matter which code language you use. So few clicks, auto-generated out of any interface that you want to work with. Configu offer three main interfaces: CLI, super easy; code agnostic, we have proxy, which is going to be a container that you run inside any Kubernetes environment, and then you can talk with its API. And of course, we have an SDK, which is going to be dedicated for each code language. Using one of these, you can, with few clicks, manage any storage system of configurations, which mean any secret manager, vault mechanism, feature flag solution, databases, static files. You can manage all of them using the configuration format, which based on Configu patterns, no matter if you like JSON or YAML, both are fine. For example, I personally prefer JSON because previously I was a DevOps, but JSON is also fine. And you can use it on board with few clicks and start benefit all the capabilities that Configu offers, from test frameworks to automation. The open source side is focused on the individual developers. So same like using Git, you don't need to gain any permission or give it any permission. Just run the CLI and work with your native permissions, manage any solution that you wish. If you want to talk to use Configu's platform, for example, which is our enterprise solution, you will have to combine it with your enterprise software, any solution that you use, and of course you can use it combined with Configu open source. And of course it's an open source, truly open source, the open source side. So feel free to contribute. We have a very nice community who help to develop Configu. We have a Discord channel. Feel free to join. Of course, everything is documented and collaborate in our GitHub. Uh, we will appreciate your star. And we appreciate collaborations and contributors. So feel free to help us to shape the configuration domain for everyone.
Amazing.
I would also like to add that open source contribution for Configu can be not only in terms of contributing code, but also contributing the scenarios in which configuration as code can help more or better. So opening issue and saying, hey, I have this scenario that it's not covered in the current usage, it can be as useful as contributing code.
Amazing. And I have one for Baruch as well. You have worked at, I think you worked at JFrog, and now you're at Gradle. So you obviously have a lot of experience and collaborated with a lot of people and organizations. So when we talk about people and like projects managing their like artifacts and build processes, where do you see like some of the common struggles that are observed in the teams? And have you seen folks adopt configuration as code practices to sort of like, resolve these challenges that they face? Oh, can you hear me?
Well,
Don't think.
Yep, sorry, that was like I had some network issue. Sorry, I get
happened every time.
Electricians working downstairs, so it might have something to do with it. Sorry, go ahead once again.
Yeah, no, I mentioned you worked at JFrog and now you're at Gradle. So you have already seen the advancement in we talk about automation tools and artifact management and things like that. We have talked to a lot of like customers. So do you think that these platforms uniquely contributed to the implementation and the evolution of the practices of configuration as code in various organizations? And any specific challenges or successes that you might want to share from your experience?
In the end of the day, we're talking about the same thing. We're talking about tools that make developers more successful, right? And if you use the right practices and you use the right tools, in the end of the day, they all contribute to your success as software developer and better code that you can write. If you use JFrog tools, if you use JFrog platform for artifact management and for security, and you use Gradle for your build, and you use Gradle Velocity for improving your productivity, obviously it goes to the same kind of avenue as using Configu for configuration as code. And there are others, right? You want to use a superb IDE like IntelliJ IDEA or VS Code with plugins. You want to use, we already mentioned, source control, which is kind of a basic hygiene of being a software developer, using CI, using CD. In the end of the day, all those tools are building your toolbox of what you have to use in order to provide first-class software better and faster with better developer experience for yourself and your teammates. And this is exactly what Configu contributes to this toolbox. That's the missing part of, hey, I have my code management, I have my artifact management, I have my security controls, I have my build, I have my CI, and here's another part, which is configuration as code. So for me, it goes right there. You use your IDE, you use your CI, you use Configu for configuration as code.
Amazing. Thanks for sharing, Baruch and Peleg. My another question is around the learning curve involved when people are trying to implement it. What are some of the key things to keep in mind?
Learning curve is a good topic. With Configu, one of the key milestone was to do it simple, as all developer know. So there isn't much learning curve in Configu. Basically, any developer without any, not necessarily using documentation, but we have documentation, you can easily understand and use it as it's configured itself as YAML or JSON. All the capabilities and all the features are open source. So if there is something that you wish to learn better or deep dive in, you can read the source code, but then you can easily use it. Like everything is informative and you can just read it, use it. Uh, it's a really simple technology to use.
Cool, cool. Thanks for sharing, Peleg. And I've also updated the links in the description, excuse me, for folks who want to check it out. Cool. One other thing is that I wanted to talk about when we talk about configuration as code is do people need to worry about technical debt?
I think they always need to
Great.
to worry about technical debt. I think configuration as a code can help them with that, because I think that most of the time people ask me, Peleg, say we have a legacy code of a decade or even more. How we can even make it more advanced, and how we can collaborate and work with configuration as a code. And I say to them, mainly it's super easy, and configuration is not binding to the code. So it doesn't really matter which code technology or how old is it. Just use configuration as a code. You can integrate into any existing code of a decade, of a monolith, spreaded microservices. Just learn configuration as a code, see how it can benefit. If you think it's going to be good for your business, just use it. It's super simple, and you can do it without worrying about new technologies changing. And technical debt is something that we handle all the time, and some of them related to configuration, which Configu can help with. So I recommend to use configuration as a code in general, or to manage configurations more carefully, even if you don't want to insert new technology and start doing it as a code. It's fine as well, but be careful about your configuration, no matter if there are tech debt or if you change something which is now.
Cool, cool. Thanks for sharing. One other thing that I just remembered is if as your deployments become more complex, like larger environments, do you think there might be a challenge in terms of like I know what like configuration code is offering, like so you have a lot of control, you have reproducibility of your like settings, and you have all these other things, but in terms of maintaining visibility and traceability of changes across various environments and configurations as the sort of like your deployments grow. Do you think that is something to keep in mind, and how Configu helps with that, or any other benefits or tips you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think that as we grow, as our technology grow, it make more and more complex, as we have tons of CI/CD processes. No matter if it's a monolith, if it's a monorepo, if it's gathered into microservices, it doesn't really matter. We have tons of different environments, CI/CD processes. Think that you can add all of them or take all of them and make one step that control all the different configuration, that the same step, no matter which environments is it, you can control and manage and verify all your configuration, that you can manage it and gain visibility over a third-party system. You can read, see, and compare all of your configuration, and then trust and be sure that when the step in the CI or CD stage will run and collect all of your latest configuration, it will be safe to release the software. I don't need to worry that someone forgot a variable, someone changed something in the secret manager, and now there is a missing or not accurate parameter in the secret manager and the feature flag solution in the database. Doesn't really matter. Config or the implementation of configuration as a code with all the restrictions, all the tests, all the security feature on top of it, you can verify that no matter who will run it, CI, CD, myself on my PC directly to the cloud, it will be safe and secured and will prevent the next misconfiguration from happening.
Absolutely. And just to highlight, you mentioned complicated software with technical depth. This is where the configuration becomes a real nightmare without proper configuration management as code.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks for sharing, Baruch and Pelik. So we spoke about configuration as code. We talked about infrastructure as code challenges, how these are different, why we need both. We spoke about feature flags, which was a nice conversation that I really liked. Just some final thoughts around any emerging trends you'd like to share that people should be aware of, and because the community is, being open source, you're open to contributions and stuff. So how can the community get involved? And then we can wrap it up.
Amazing. I think that first of all, we need to talk about configuration as code as a trend. Before I will talk about configure in general, we can see tons of different solutions who offer different stages or different phases inside the configuration lifecycle. For example, Apple just show an interest and release PKL, but others as well. So I think in general, it's important to manage your configuration better, no matter which technology you're going to use. Using Configu is going to be super easy, super simple. And if you want to join us, contribute to Configu. It's a living open source community. Feel free to join the Discord if you have any question of implementation, you don't know how or where to contribute. And if you decide to contribute, we have tons of interesting things, from giving a feedback, suggesting features, or even doing it all around and contribute them by yourself. Think of the configuration domain. Think all of the integrations that you can achieve, from integrating into any vault or secret manager, any feature flag solution, any format, and there are tons of formats that we're managing as a configuration. We cannot cover all of that in a day. So a community that helps us, a community that helps everyone, because it's not a Configu project. It's a project that need to help, and it's aimed to help everyone collaborating and managing configuration. So feel free to search our project. Our link is here in the bio. Search our project, see, run it first of all, of course. After running it and understand, we have documentation if you need any help running it, contribute it, or gain the benefits of Configu, then feel free to investigate a bit more, search, read the code, and of course, suggest feedback, bugs if you find, of course, but also new features, new integration, or use another secret manager that we didn't create an integration for. You use another format, we welcome everyone. There isn't a wrong contribution. There is someone who wants to help. We're willing to help him to help everyone.
Amazing. Well, as Peleg mentioned, all the links are in the description, but I didn't really check out the PKL one. So this might be because it's Apple's format. So also like a contribution on their side to increase the credibility and adoption of configuration as code in the whole industry, which is nice. I didn't check this one, so I'll have to see the news and articles or whatever. But no, this is nice. It's cool.
Definitely, it showed their interest and their belief that configuration domain in the application side is indeed a huge problem, that they invest a lot of time to develop a format of configuration from their end. And we already working on an integration of PKL inside Configu, because in general, our dream is to create one-stop shop that can manage any type, format, or technology. Because at the end, our mess is when we're combining and need to work with too many things, too many technologies. And as a developer, I just want to write the code, run it, and make sure that it's going to work on my end or on production. Configu help both on the productivity of the developer for using the open source, but also for the sake of the organization, as the organization use Configu and implement Configu inside their systems.
Cool. Thanks a lot for sharing, Peleg and Varush. I learned a lot from you and had a good conversation. Yeah, and if you all want to continue the conversation, you can join the Discord channel, which you can find in the description below, and the GitHub repository as well. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye.
Don't forget to star us. Thank you, Kunal.
Thank you all.